Welcome to Speaking of Grace, the weekly message podcast from the Whole Life Church in Orlando, Florida. We're a multi-ethnic, multicultural, and multi-generational congregation committed to our mission of loving people into a lifelong friendship with God. We are committed to our vision of being a church without walls, fully engaged in serving the people of our community. Thank you for joining us as we continue Speaking of Grace.
Hi, Ken. It's the other Ken, and I can't wait to hear you preach today on my favorite Bible verse, Romans 12:21, specifically from J.B. Phillips' New Testament, where Paul says, "Don't allow yourself to be overcome by evil. Take the offensive. Overcome evil with good." I love this verse for two reasons. One, we shouldn't be overcome by the evil that we see around us or the evil that's done to us. And we have a proactive way to address it. Take the offensive, overcome evil with good. I can't wait to hear your sermon today.
All right, okay. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. Welcome to Summer of Whole Life. We are so happy. We are doing a series called Our Favorite Things. And basically, since this year began, I was telling you, send me your favorite Bible verse. Send me your favorite Bible passage. Send me your favorite Bible story. And then this summer, I'll preach on it. And so a number of you have taken me up on that. I think we have maybe one or two slots left, so it may not be too late if you have. I'm just saying if you can try, I don't know, send me an email, ken@wholelife.church. But it's our favorite things from the Bible, and that's what we're going to do from now through the beginning of August. So I'm really looking forward to this, and so thank you to Ken Bradley, who was actually born into the Whole Life Church, literally. So he has been here for a couple years, and he also serves currently as our Whole Life Church board chair. And so we thought we'd start off with Ken's favorite verse, but not my favorite. It's his favorite verse. Okay, just so we're clear. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at Romans chapter 12. One of the really important things to do, particularly when it's just one verse, is to look at what's happening around those verses. So let's take a look at what's happening around Romans chapter 12. And I'm going to specifically start in verse 14. And just to keep you awake and listening, I'm going to need your help. Take a look at the first slide here. You see the part that isn't in cursive? I'm reading that. You see the part in cursive? I want you to read that. Okay? For some of you who don't know what cursive is, because this is kind of what it is, all right? So we're going to practice with you. So let's go ahead and try that out. So we're going to start. This is, again, reading Romans 12, 14 through 21. I'll read the part that's easy to read. You're going to read the part that's harder to read, all right? Here we go. As for those who try to make your life a misery, bless them. Share the happiness of those who are happy, the sorrow of those who are sad. Don't allow yourself to be overpowered with evil. Wow, we're jumping really quick to the end there. Let's go ahead and keep moving. Here we go. This is actually, don't pay back a bad turn by a bad turn to anyone. Don't say it doesn't matter what people think, but see that as far as your responsibility goes, live at peace with everyone. Never take vengeance into your own hands. My dear friends, stand back and let God punish if he will. For it is written, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay." These are God's words. Therefore, if your enemy hungers, feed him. If he thirsts, give him a drink, for in so doing, And then, Ken Bradley's favorite verse. Don't allow yourself to be overpowered with evil. Take the offensive. And that is the end of Romans chapter 12. Do you know what comes after Romans chapter 12? Romans 13. Somebody's on there. Yes, somebody's on their game. I was waiting for that. And who knows what's in Romans chapter 13? Romans 13 starts off by talking about how Paul wants believers to relate to the government. And in his time, it's specifically to the Roman government, which Paul probably would have argued was an evil government. Does that add some context to what's happening here? Paul isn't talking about something ambiguous to the people he's writing to them. He's talking about something incredibly difficult. He's talking to a bunch of people who don't have a whole lot of power and are up against the greatest military might of their time, the Roman Empire. And he's said all that. Turn the other cheek. Do good. Go ahead and take a moment. Take a moment, and I want you to carefully visualize an evil in the world right now, maybe that impacts you directly. Do you have that in your mind? An evil in the world that you believe to be evil and that may be impacting you. And I want to ask you a question. It's a very serious question. Because we'll read through this verse, overpower evil by doing good, and all of us Christians will sing Kumbaya together. Yes, Paul is a genius. But I want to ask you a real question. Do you really believe that evil can be overcome by good? When you visualize the evil that you just visualized, do you genuinely believe that goodness can actually overcome it? I hope you'll be honest with yourself about that. Maybe the answer for you is absolutely yes, but could I also say that if you're one of the people who has something in this world that is oppressing you, that's impinging on your freedoms, that's hurting you, that's hurting your family, it might be a lot harder for you to get to a yes on that. Especially if you've been trying to do the right thing, but that evil is still hurting you and the people you love. Paul was not writing this letter to Americans in Orlando. He was writing it to a group of people who genuinely understood what it meant to be powerless in the face of evil. And maybe that's some of you here today too. So I'm not trying to say it's not, but what I'm saying is he was writing it to a tough audience. And the reason why it was tough is because unlike us who have been saturated with this particular Christian philosophy of overcoming evil with good, this was more of a debatable statement. What do I mean by that? Well, the Greco-Roman Empire did not believe that evil could be overcome by good. They didn't believe that at all. They believed this, that you fight fire with fire. If somebody's going to do something bad, you do something worse to them. And that will set a precedent that will stop them from doing it. You all do know how to fight fire with fire, right? Literally. This is when there's a wildfire out in the wilderness, right? And firefighters will come along and they'll find a small area that's before where the fire is at, and they will deliberately burn that area to the ground and put it out. It's a controlled fire. They burn it all the way, everything, all the vegetation, all the way down to the ground. They create a swath, and what happens is when the wildfire gets to that swath, if they've done it right, it runs out of fuel, and it can't keep going. Is that what Paul was talking about when he said to heap coals of fire? We'll come back to that. But the Roman Empire believed that. We will burn things to the ground to keep other things from burning us to the ground. It was a common philosophy. You think of any Greek or Roman philosopher, and they will talk about how beautiful revenge is and how important it is and how it keeps life stable. The historian Tom Holland, notice I said historian, we're not talking about the actor. For those of you who are a little confused, we're talking about the historian Tom Holland, wrote a book called Dominion. And in that book, he talks about how the Romans were serious about revenge and using evil to combat evil. Cicero said this, a Roman great orator and philosopher, said, revenge is that through which by defending or avenging we repel violence, injury, and anything likely to be harmful from ourselves and from those who ought to be dear to us. This is the philosophy that Paul is going 180 degrees in the opposite direction of. And it was nonsense to many of the people reading it. Tom Holland writes in Dominion, he says, divinity then, divinity. In other words, the gods. Divinity then was for the very greatest of the great, for victors, heroes, and kings. Its measure was the power to torture one's enemies, not to suffer it oneself, to nail their enemies to the rocks of a mountain, or to turn them into spiders, or to blind and crucify them after conquering the world. That was what divinity looked like to the Roman world. So when Paul says, overcome evil by taking the offensive with good, it was nonsense to a lot of the people that would have read it. Because Christianity came along and proposed something different. Christianity said, yes, we believe that good can overcome evil. That by doing good, we can overcome evil. We do not buy into the fighting fire with fire. Instead, there's a different metaphor that we're going to use. I'm going to give you a quick warning. I'm about to ask our lighting technician to turn off all the lights in here because we're going to use the other metaphor that the Christians used, okay? So don't be afraid. This is planned. You're okay. It's mostly dark in here. How do you fight darkness? Not by more darkness. You can't punch it, you can't kick it to get rid of it. So I want you to fight darkness right now. How are you going to do it? One or two people don't make a big dent in it, do they? But it's a little dent. What happens when more and more and more lights come on? The sun rises. One of the challenges of doing good is that it often doesn't feel like it makes a big dent. And that's how Christianity started. it started with the Lord Jesus Christ being born. And these words were spoken just before he was born. Because of God's tender mercy, the morning light from heaven is about to break upon us, to give light to those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death. Jesus said, I have come as a light to shine in this dark world, so that all who put their trust in me Jesus' goodness appeared to be a failure. When Jesus went to the cross, in his culture and his time, it appeared to be complete and abject failure. No real God would ever allow itself to be murdered. Why? Because divinity is getting revenge. It's a true God would have wiped Pilate off the map. He would have taken out the entire Roman battalion in Jerusalem, then marched on Rome and burned it to the ground and done horrific things to the citizenry of that country. And that's what Jesus' followers wanted. And instead, Jesus died, saying ridiculous stuff like this. When they came to a place called the Skull, they nailed Jesus to the cross. And the criminals were also crucified, one on his right and one on his left. Jesus said, for the Romans, a real God would have struck those men dead right on the spot. And not just struck them dead, but tortured them and hurt them. But that's not what Jesus did. A light shone from Calvary. And it was just a small light in an evil empire. And what Tom Holland argues in Dominion is that something incredible happened. What for millennia had been considered to be the norm, get even, do revenge, at this moment begins to shift. And a few more lights come on, 12 around Jesus come on. And they start living a life of goodness. And those lights begin to multiply and they suffer. They're persecuted, they're hurt, but they keep doing what Jesus asked. And I need you to understand that Tom Holland grew up Anglican, I believe, but early in his young adult years, he left his faith and became agnostic, secular agnostic historian. And he began to write Dominion not as a Christian apologist, but as a secular agnostic historian. And writing that book profoundly changed Tom Holland's life. Not all in one moment, but by the time he was done writing the book, he said, I have to say there's something about Christianity because it turned everything upside down. It is the audacity of it. The audacity of finding in a twisted and defeated corpse the glory of the creator of the universe that serves to explain more surely than anything else the sheer strangeness of Christianity and of the civilization to which it gave birth. Tom Holland argues that our world now swims in the philosophy of Christianity, a philosophy that says, turn the other cheek, do good to others. And while Christianity has not done that well all the time, it has still changed the way that the world operated for the better. It has produced people like Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, who wasn't a Christian but ascribed to Christ's philosophy. I think of Daryl Davis, a black blues musician who spent decades intentionally engaging with and befriending members of the Ku Klux Klan. And through open dialogue and humanity, he ultimately convinced over 200 members to surrender their robes and leave the hate group. I think about Ruby Bridges at 6 years old, becoming the first African-American student to integrate into an elementary school in the South. And instead of reacting with anger to the racist mobs threatening her daily, she frequently prayed for them on her walk to school. I think of Irina Sendler, a Polish social worker who risked execution to smuggle 2,500 Jewish children out of the Warsaw Ghetto. I think about Desmond Doss, who believed in nonviolence to the point that he wouldn't carry a weapon in war, and yet he went into the most dangerous places and was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his heroism in saving lives because he believed in doing good and that good defeats evil. I think about Maximilian Kolbe, a Polish Catholic priest imprisoned in Auschwitz. 10 men were selected to be starved to death in retaliation for an escaped prisoner, and Kolbe voluntarily stepped forward to take the place of a man who was weeping because of what was going to happen to his wife and children. I think about the Amish community in Nickel Mines, Pennsylvania. A gunman, if you remember this, in 2006, it's been 20 years, a gunman tragically killed 5 young girls in their Amish schoolhouse. And within hours, that Amish community had publicly offered forgiveness to the family of the shooter. They attended the shooter's funeral, and they established a charitable fund for his wife and his kids. I think about Hugh Thompson Jr., a U.S. Army helicopter pilot who landed his aircraft between American soldiers and Vietnamese civilians to stop the My Lai massacre. He ordered his crew to point their weapons at their own troops to shield the innocent villagers from further slaughter. These were people who understood that goodness is not passive. It is not weakness. It is the hardest thing possible. And Paul knew it was hard when he asked it, but you know what he thought of? He thought of his Savior who had done for him. But God showed his great love for me and for you by sending Christ to die for us while we were still evil. Christ overcame evil with good, and he asks us as his followers to do the same. These are God's words. Therefore, if your enemy hungers, feed him. If he thirsts, give him a drink. For in so doing, there is a prominent New Testament theologian named Kenneth Wust, who is a Greek New Testament scholar at the Moody Bible Institute. And Kenneth says that in the times that this were written, you had to keep the fire in your house running at all times. If it ever went out, you were in deep trouble because you wouldn't be able to cook. You wouldn't be able to purify your water. You had to have it. So what happened if your fire went out? You had to go to your neighbor's house and ask them for some coals to relight your fire. And according to Kenneth, what would happen is your neighbor, if they were kind to you, would pile that carrier that you had with live coals. And they needed to not put 1 or 2 in there because it had to stay alive until you could get home and get that fire. So they would put as many as they could get in there for your benefit. And then that person would carry those coals on their head back to their home. There are other interpretations of what this verse may mean, but I love this one. Oftentimes, the people who perpetuate evil are hurting people themselves in need of light. And when we can heap light onto them, they can take it home and maybe be different, maybe change. And that's why it's so important for us to not allow ourselves to be overpowered with the urge to get even and to take vengeance into our own hands, but instead take the offensive.
Hi, this is Randy McGray, podcast producer and host here at Whole Life Church. Loving people into a lifelong friendship with God is our mission at the Whole Life Church, and our podcasts are designed to help facilitate conversations that help us grow together in that pursuit. Now that you've heard the message for this week, don't forget to check out the Whole Life takeaways for this message. Swipe up in today's show notes and join the conversation. Speaking of conversations, each Wednesday morning we take a closer look at the week's message. That's right, the one you just listened to. We discuss practical ways to apply spiritual lessons and ask honest questions about the issues we face as Christians, all focused through the lens of grace. Your voice is a welcomed addition to that conversation. We encourage your thoughts and your questions by sending a voicemail or text to 407-965-1607 or send an email to podcast@wholelife.church. You can find everything podcast related on our website, wholelife.church/podcast. And plan on spending every Tuesday evening and Wednesday morning with us as we bring you the Whole Life Church inspiration you love straight into your headphones. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.